Tell.
Special report. Here's Tom Llamas.
And good day from Tel Aviv on this historic day in the Middle East. Right now, President Trump is landing here in Israel, the beginning of his whirlwind trip to the region. All of this happening to formalize the first phase of a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Well, at the same time, 7 of the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages have just been returned to Israel after 738 days in captivity. It is an incredible split screen that is happening right now. President Trump is being greeted here in Israel with an arrival ceremony before he meets with the hostage families this morning. We have already seen Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the airport, along with Jared and Ivanka Kushner, along with Steve Witkoff, special envoy to the Middle East, and the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. We know that President Trump today will address the Israeli Knesset, that's their parliament. Then later today, the president will head to Egypt for what the White House is calling a signing ceremony on the Gaza peace deal. Other world leaders will be there as well, including the heads of Egypt, Jordan, the UK, and France. But notably, officials from Israel and Hamas are not expected, at least at not this part, in the negotiations. Iran also declined an invitation. I'm joined here in Hostage Square this morning in Tel Aviv by our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. Richard, here in Hostage Square, it has been an incredible scene. We've seen 65,000 to 100,000 people gather here, all watching these screens and watching that split screen, the hostage caravan being taken over, we think, to a helipad somewhere, along with Air Force One landing here in Israel. When we could see Air Force One land, the cheers were loud, but nothing as loud as the hostages when they were speaking with their families.
So there are hostage viewing parties as well going on, where hostages are gathered with their intimates in their homes, watching this directly. That's happening all over the country. As you mentioned, 7 hostages so far have come out. According to officials, they are in good health. They are in good condition. They are being received by their families, received by the military. Then they'll be transferred to a hospital. And people here, yes, are watching, because any moment now, President Trump is about to get off Air Force One.
Walk us through what we know about the 7 hostages so far. They're inside of these ambulances. We know the Red Cross was sort of the governing body that took over the hostages. Hamas released the names. They knew the first 7 that were coming out. There are still 13 that we're waiting, hopefully will be released soon as well. Then they were given to the IDF, and the IDF is taking them over there, as you said. But in the meantime, we believe Hamas also let these hostages communicate with their families. We saw some of the FaceTimes and some of the phone calls, mothers and fathers erupting in tears.
So, exactly, you could see some of that on that big screen right now. So Hamas came out onto the streets, but not dressed in fatigues, not dressed in military-style uniforms, black police keeping order throughout this process. They handed over the hostages to the Red Cross as promised, without fanfare, without a propaganda ceremony. The Red Cross took them in vehicles, transferred them to the Israeli military, also in vehicles. Now they're going to be flown to receive medical attention and to meet more family members. And yes, this is the moment that everyone here has been waiting for. We've been calling this Hostage Square. It's not called Hostage Square. We are in front of the Tel Aviv Art Museum, and people are hoping here one day to stop calling this Hostage Square, and they're hoping today might be that day.
As I check my watch here, it's 2:54 a.m. in New York, 9:54 here. It was incredible. At around 9:33, the hostages arrived back in Israel. Around 9:45 local, that's when President Trump landed. He will be greeted here as a hero. You see billboards all over Tel Aviv saying, "Thank you, Mr. President." Every time his image comes on the screen or Air Force One, people are clapping here. He, in many ways, is given a lot of credit for this happening today.
He absolutely is. And I think any minute now, the delegation is now walking to the plane. So while we're speaking right now, I think we're going to see the first images of President Trump. And we're going to see more and more cheers. And by the way, as we speak right now, the Red Cross is waiting in southern Gaza to receive another batch of hostages. First 7, we're going to see another batch quite soon.
Yeah, but that's sort of the unknown, right? It was unclear if there was going to be 2 batches of prisoners or 3. Again, Israel is ready for as many as they need, as long as they can get all those 20 living hostages, which we believe will be completed today.
the deal is it must be completed today, that all 20 must be completed today, otherwise the deal stops. What happens with the remains of 28 others is still more unclear. They have until Thursday to find all of the remains.
If you're joining our live coverage now, we're seeing our first images now of President Trump as he's arrived here at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. He will address the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament. He's being greeted now by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, an ally obviously in the region, and someone he negotiated with intensely over the last few months to get this deal, this first phase of the peace plan with Hamas. Also on hand, as we've mentioned before, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, Ivanka, his daughter, and Steve Witkoff, his special envoy to the Middle East, who really has been coordinating a lot of the negotiations both here and in Qatar to get to that place where they could agree, at least on paper, right, Richard? They could agree that at the first phase, they'll release the hostages. Israel will pull back from Gaza. Maybe the most important part, maybe the most sensitive part, but the most complicated part is going to happen in phase 2. What happens to Gaza? What happens to the Israeli military there? And who is in charge?
All of those are open questions. Some of them still need to be negotiated. The Israeli military is calling this Operation Returning Home. And I believe now our first image is the President
We are seeing President Trump. He's just made that 10-hour journey from Washington, D.C. here to Israel right now. Here in Hostage Square, they are applauding every time they see him. They applaud. He's being greeted again by the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, here. It's unclear if he'll speak right away. The President at times does speak to the press. If he sees some cameras, he'll come up and talk. We don't have any plans of that right now, at least not on the schedule, but with President Trump, you never really know. Richard, this is an incredible day. 2 years in the making. Those hostages have lived in hell for 2 years, tortured, starved. The 20 living right now, hopefully, will be back in Israel at least in a few hours. And you can hear people here in Hostage Square saying, "Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, President Trump," as he's greeting Benjamin Netanyahu. We're watching a live feed as well here in Hostage Square. It's being broadcast all over the square. Tens of thousands are here. Israeli flags in the air. Lots of smiles, lots of cheers. People are in a joyous mode. It's tough to describe, right, Richard, because this is still a war. More than 60,000 have died in Gaza. 1,200 died in Israel in that initial terrorist attack. And there are still the remains, right, of 28 other Israelis and members of other countries, the remains that have to be negotiated and brought back into Israel.
The future of Gaza remains unclear. What will happen to Hamas? It will have to be rebuilt almost entirely. The infrastructure is completely destroyed. As you mentioned, more than 60,000 killed, 67,000 plus, and every day they are finding more and more bodies under the rubble. But what is happening now is a crucial step because Israel has made it clear the rest of the deal will not move forward unless this is successful, unless these 20 hostages come out today alive, without fanfare, and are handed over to their families. The rest of the deal is blocked. So far, it does seem to be successful. They are coming out. They appear to be in good health. Now President Trump is here, and as you can see, he is being cheered and given that hero's welcome you were anticipating.
And we were just looking at President Trump there being greeted by the ambassador to Israel from the United States, Ambassador Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, also a very close ally to President Trump in both his terms. We should also mention, Richard, because this was important, you said from what we understand, the 7 hostages that were given up, they appear to be in, we can't say good health, but they appear to be well enough to sort of be taken out and then taken to the hospital.
Just to briefly tell you the story of one hostage. I've gotten to know, as all of Israel has gotten to know, these hostages by name.
Yeah.
Their pictures are all over the country. They are, I don't want to say national heroes, but they've become national symbols.
Yes.
Everyone knows their story. Yeah. And today, a brother who I spoke to just a couple of days is receiving his brother on October 7th. They were together at the Nova Music Festival when Hamas militants came down from paragliders and started opening fire, killing and kidnapping as many people as they could. They got separated in the melee. One was taken, one made it out. Today, they're going to be back together. And those kind of emotional stories are important for that family, obviously, but they are being felt by all the people in the square. Anyone here will tell you that they feel like a part of a collective family that is being reunited.
Yeah. Here at Hostage Square, we see the flags and we see the cheering. We also see photos of all those hostages that line the square that Israel has never forgotten. We also see sort of memories of the October 7th terrorist attack, horrific memories, burnt out cars and other sort of artifacts of a very dark history for this country from that attack.
Just behind us, off camera, there is a model of one of the tunnels. So it's made of paper mache and cement, but people could come here and put themselves inside one of the tunnels to get a sense of what it might be like. There have been empty tables set up with place settings and empty glasses to receive the hostages when they come back. This has been a place to reflect the Israelis' emotions throughout this time with these rotating symbolic exhibits, and also a place for the families of hostages to gather, to express their opinions, for people to come in solidarity. There have been anti-government protests here, a lot of anger directed against Prime Minister Netanyahu for not getting this deal done sooner, but now also a lot of joy for President Trump. They credit him more than Netanyahu for getting this deal done.
I do want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, who's reporting today from Jerusalem. Peter, some people are going to see Jared Kushner here, of course, his wife, Ivanka Trump. Jared, no formal role, right, in this administration, but a key negotiator and a key ally to the president, advisor to him in this region, and someone who's also received a lot of credit, both from the Israelis, from the Qataris, on negotiating this deal.
Yeah, Tom, that's exactly right. Jared Kushner working hand in hand with the special envoy, Steve Witkoff. We saw the president greeting his special envoy just moments ago. Now he's walking besides Benjamin Netanyahu and the president, which is a ceremonial position in this country, Isaac Herzog. We should note that President Trump will be told by Herzog, we have learned when he arrives here at the Knesset later, that he is going to be awarded with Israel's highest honor, the Presidential Medal of Honor, which will be delivered to President Trump at another date, but he will learn that today. Notably, we've also learned from the president of Egypt, President El-Sisi, that President Trump, upon his arrival there, will be receiving what is known as the Nile necklace, the highest state honor in that country. But back to the conversation you were having about Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I did speak to Steve Witkoff. We exchanged messages a short time ago. I asked him for his thoughts, and he gave his first comments to NBC News saying, "I wondered if I would ever see this day. It is deeply gratifying to know that so many families will finally have their loved ones home." Witkoff, in his message to me, said that it's an act of dignity that must be completed for the return of those remains so that the other families can be at peace. And he noted that it reminded him of his own son, Andrew, who died at the age of 22 in 2011 of an opioid overdose. He felt sort of the pain through his own experience that many of these families have felt in the course of this loss. Separately, you saw the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, of course, as you noted, familiar to many people back at home, as the former governor of Arkansas, of course, also the father of President Trump's first press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, second, I should say, after Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who served in the president's first term. Huckabee posting a short time ago that this moment, these images were to him like the moon landing. He said, in effect, it's when time freezes. And I think that really is a good way to describe the feeling, the sentiment that we are hearing from people throughout this area. I woke up this morning, saw an Israeli American who was walking through the streets, and I asked her how she was feeling today. Her face was glowing. She says, "It is amazing. We never thought this day would come." This is a day that they have certainly dreamed of, a day the president has worked toward for a long time. President Biden certainly did, but couldn't get it over the finish line before his departure. 105 of those hostages were released during his term, but of course, the final hostages, the last 20, with 7 already in the hands of the Israelis and their families now, 13 more expected today, will make that final journey home. And even those who served in the previous administration acknowledge that President Trump deserves a ton of credit for the success he's had in that effort.
All right, Peter, stand by for us. As Peter was reporting there, we had a bit of breaking news coming in. The Red Cross is back in Gaza to receive another batch of those hostages. We just saw a video just behind us of a FaceTime between one of the hostages still in Gaza being held by a Hamas militant who was dressed all in black. All you could see were their eyes, handing a phone essentially to that hostage so they could call their families. The temperature, the atmosphere, everything about this hostage release is very different than what we saw in months past. Richard joins me again here live. Richard, we covered those first initial hostage releases. At times, they were sort of propaganda adventures for Hamas, right? An exercise in propaganda for Hamas, giving them to-go bags and things like that. This time, it seems like the hostages are being a bit more respected.
Much more respected. In the earlier days, Hamas effectively put on shows of strength, military parades. They would line up holding weapons, handing over the hostages in ceremonies designed to make them look powerful. There were many complaints that the hostages were being dehumanized until the last minute, that they were being exploited for propaganda reasons. This time, the Hamas militants, even in the vehicles, are handing them phones, say, here, talk to your families. And we've been seeing some of those phone calls when the families are receiving live video calls with their families while they're being handed over from Hamas.
Yeah.
So a different approach.
As we see pictures of President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu get into the same vehicle and leave, we believe, for the Knesset later today and to meet with those hostage families, I want to bring our chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons, who's reporting from Egypt for us this morning. And Keir, it's important to talk about Qatar and what Benjamin Netanyahu did in Qatar, that bombing that sort of laid the groundwork in a very strange way to where we are today. Essentially, it was that strategic, what some have described, a strategic mistake by Israel in bombing Qatar, not exactly getting the target at all that they were aiming for, crossing boundaries, having this war cross yet more borders. But because of that, President Trump was then able to start putting pressure on the Israelis, and then the Arab leaders putting pressure on Hamas at the same time, Keir.
That's right, Tom. I mean, that was a tipping point, no question. It left the Arab world, Gulf leaders, furious and demanding that there be a shift, and a shift there was, and mostly, almost entirely down to the pressure, the personal pressure, the presidential pressure that President Trump was able to place on Hamas and on Israel. As you see him there climbing into the beast to head to the Knesset, we are expecting him here in this aging conference center here in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt in just a few hours' time to celebrate really with Arab leaders and with European leaders this incredible moment. You know, Tom, we're underneath the flight path here. We might well see Air Force One fly over us before President Trump arrives here, but it is hastily thrown together. We've been watching security running around, trying to make this place safe. In a corner just outside of the view of the camera across here, there are international flags waiting to be put in place. I've been talking to European governments who say that their expectation is that there will be this signing ceremony that will involve President Trump as well as the leaders of Qatar and Egypt and President Erdogan of Turkey, but that they haven't been told whether their leaders will have an opportunity to speak during the ceremony here. They don't know whether or not they are going to be asked to make pledges for Gaza while they are here. This is a work in progress, very much President Trump's style, but it also, Tom, you know, underscores the huge challenges that now face the region once this first phase is finished, if you like, once the living hostages, we hope, are released, once the Palestinian prisoners are released. There are all kinds of questions, and they are laid out in the 20-point plan that President Trump published that got this diplomatic process really moving, because that plan talks, for example, about a temporary transitional administration for Gaza. Who is going to run that administration? Is it going to be the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair? Now President Trump seems to be suggesting he's not certain. What countries here in this region will be involved in that kind of governance for Gaza. How difficult is it going to be to govern Gaza with everything that has happened? And then that's, of course, not even talking about the other issues. For example, will Hamas walk away from the political process? Will it disarm? How on earth to reconstruct Gaza and what to do with the Palestinians living there while that is underway? All of those issues are yet to be figured out. And I don't think, honestly, Tom, in the few hours that President Trump will spend here with Arab leaders, European leaders, leaders from around the world, that they'll be able to figure all of that out. But certainly this will be part of that next move, that next step, that next crucial step, if, as President Trump says, that this is to be a moment for peace, for the future, for Gaza.
All right, Keir Simmons reporting from Egypt for us this morning. Keir, you stand by. If you're just joining our coverage, we are reporting live today, I should say, from Tel Aviv, where President Trump has just landed here. But more importantly, where 7 hostages have been released by Hamas that are back now in Israel. There are 13 remaining hostages that are still living somewhere in Gaza that will be released according to the plan later today. We've just received notification that the Red Cross is back in Gaza, that they are now with the second batch of living hostages. Unclear how many in that number, but we've already seen some of them call into their families. We also know that the 7 that arrived, as I look over my shoulder as cheering starts, we hear sporadic cheering when some of the living hostages are phoning into their family members. Hamas has been doing this throughout the morning, and then once they're in Israel as well, there are more communications. We understand that the IDF right now is taking that original 7 to the hospital to make sure they're being checked out. From our understanding, all of the 20 hostages from initial reports are in a condition that they're being able to be taken to the hospital. We don't want to say they're in good condition because they've been tortured living in tunnels underneath Gaza for more than 2 years now. But from what we understand right now, they're at least in a condition where they can get themselves into these ambulances, taken to the hospital, and in some cases maybe even flown by helicopter to different locations. This is a day in Israel that so many across this country have waited for. Behind me, 65,000 plus have gathered here in Hostage Square. There are times here where hundreds of thousands, up to 400,000 people have gathered on Saturday nights to pray, to talk about, to remember those hostages. To give you that idea what that means, I mean, 400,000 people in a very small country like Israel would be like tens of millions somewhere in the United States gathering on one night. So it shows how unified this country is behind getting those hostages back. Richard Engel joins our team here. He's been reporting throughout the war. Richard, we covered this from the moment that terrorist attack happened on October 7th to when those hostages were taken, to times when families were told that their loved ones were dead. And for 28 other families, I should say, they're going to be waiting for those remains. And that's going to be a tricky part because already Hamas has let Israel know through mediators that they don't have everyone, correct? They don't have the remains of everyone. And that's because Gaza in many ways has been decimated.
So right now we are seeing the first stage of this process. The first 7 have come out. Yes, as you mentioned, taken out by vehicles, taken to waiting helicopters. We've just seen an image of those helicopters waiting on a base. At that base, they'll be greeted with some family members to try and alleviate the shock, flown to a hospital where more family members are waiting. I've spoken with the medical staff at the main hospital receiving the hostages, and they say treating the mind is just as important as treating the body, that they'll be treated for malnutrition. Yes, it does appear that at this stage, the ones we know about are in good health. Good health that they're not on the verge of life and death.
Yeah.
Good health after 700 days in captivity of the stress of living underground. Absolutely, they're going to need medical.
A single piece of bread, right, Richard? That's all they were given a day.
So one of these hostages, Evatiar Ben David, I've spoken to his family many times over the course of this process, over the course of this national trauma. He was shown in a video at the brink of starvation, barely alive. So yes, in some cases they were given a piece of bread. Many times the hostages were kept in small groups, and they would have to share the bread among themselves. They would also have to prevent themselves from turning on each other. I spoke to a hostage who was held in a group, and he said the stress, the claustrophobia, the temperature, the small confined space was overwhelming, and that the hostages would give them disinformation. They would tell them that their government had abandoned them, that their relatives were dead, to try and break them psychologically and physically.
Yeah,
so they will absolutely need medical condition, but relatively speaking, so far it appears that they are going to survive this ordeal, according to medical officials who we've been speaking to, who are prepared to receive it.
We have seen the vans now arrive to those helicopters we've been talking about, where they will then be airlifted to the hospitals where they will be cared for. We've also saw some video yesterday that Israel put out, the IDF put out, of the rooms these people are going to stay in, the hostages, before they go home to their families. And it was strange to see this, Richard, because they were private rooms, they were beds, they were showering supplies, things these 20 hostages have not seen in 2 years, I should say.
The director of the hospital that is going to receive them told me that one of the most important things is to allow the hostages to feel human again.
Yeah.
That they're not going to be ordered around. They're not going to be told, like we often find ourselves when we go to the hospital, sit down, we need your blood, we need a sample. They're going to greet their families. Another video showing a hostage.
Yeah.
These are proof of life.
Right.
Because until you see them, you don't know.
Believe.
You don't believe it. But the important thing this doctor told me is to allow the hostages to start making choices, to start feeling human again, to allow themselves to decide, I want to take a shower, I want to eat, I want to take a nap. And yes, all of this has been up in the air until you actually see the whites of their eyes, so to speak. So I've been speaking to hostage families, and some of them have said they don't want to talk on camera because they don't want to jinx this process. Yeah. They don't want to not just get their hopes up too high. They don't want to say anything, do anything that could put these last risky moments in jeopardy. But so far, it does seem to be going according to plan. First batch out and another batch in process right now.
Yeah, I spoke with Omri Miran, his family, I should say, who told me that they want to just give him a choice, right? I said, what is the first thing you're going to do? And his brother-in-law told me, I'm not going to do anything because I want to give him a choice. He has not had choices for 2 years, so whatever he chooses to do. So I think they've also worked with the families to make sure the families understand, how do you handle someone like this who's been in captivity for 2 years?
That is training. They are told specifically, let them try and become human again. This doctor told me. She gives them a quick, there's 2 doctors. They will be read by a psychologist and a medical physical doctor. They will be given a quick assessment to see if they need any urgent care. If so, obviously that will happen. Otherwise, they spend time with their families. They relax a little bit. They're given some food, not carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be very dangerous for someone who has been in starvation. So refeeding is a critical part of this. And then they are allowed to start making choices for themselves, how they want to proceed. So this is all part of the process for the healing of the family and for the healing of this nation.
And we should remind our viewers, Richard, of course, there's going to be 2,000 Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel who will now be released in exchange for these 20 living hostages. This is not just Hamas letting hostages go. 2,000 prisoners are going to be sent back into Gaza.
And the list exactly of that prisoners is continually updated. Just a few minutes ago, we learned about a Palestinian doctor taken in Gaza who was not on the list, who is now on the list. So up until the last minute, the discussions of the names are ongoing. But yes, 1,700 prisoners who were arrested during the war in Gaza themselves to be handed over, people who are not believed to be associated with the October 7th attack, and then 250 prisoners who were held, some of them with life sentences in Israel, handed over as well.
All right, Richard Engel, we thank you. If you're just joining us, we have been covering for the last 30 minutes or so the hostage release here in Israel. Hamas giving back 7 living hostages. There are still 13 remaining. We understand another batch is now being met up by the Red Cross to be taken out of Gaza into Israel. All of this as President Trump has landed here in Israel. He's going to meet with the hostage families and also address the Israeli parliament before leaving to Egypt, where today he will also sign a peace agreement along with with Arab nations. And it's interesting, Israel and Hamas not sort of part of that meeting, but this will affect where they live and their own citizens. We believe, everyone here in Israel believes that all 20 living hostages will be released as 2,000 Palestinian prisoners are released out of Israel back into Gaza. We're going to be giving you updates throughout the morning and all throughout the day. This is going to conclude this NBC News special report for now. We're going to be back on the air when President Trump speaks at the Knesset in the next hour or so. In the meantime, we'll have more ahead on your local station, our streaming network, NBC News Now, and of course, always online at NBCNews.com. I'm Tom Llamas reporting live from Tel Aviv. We thank you for watching.